China's services sector bounced back to growth in May for the first time since the coronavirus restrictions were eased. The Caixin Market Services Purchasing Managers Index rose to 55, the highest level in about 10 years. Now, a reading above 50 indicates expansion. The index is closely watched as the services sector accounts for close to 60% of China's economy and is an important generator of jobs. That's in contrast to India, which endured another month of devastating contraction to its services industry. Its PMI was 12.6, according to IHS Markit, with the impact of the lockdown resulting in steep job losses. Despite economies reopening across the region, the manufacturing PMI for South Korea, Japan and Taiwan all fell in May. Readings for India, Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand and the Philippines improved, but still stayed below 50. Singapore's PMI, out later tonight, is also expected to paint a grim picture for the export-dependent economy. And for a closer look, we're joined by Mark Matthews, Head of Research Asia at Julius Baer. Mark, thanks for joining us. So what does China's May PMI tell us? Now, is it too soon to say if China's economy is on its way to recovery?
Well, actually, it's been recovering pretty much since March. It was the first to be hit by the virus and the first to come out of it. So the PMI is one indicator we can look at, but there are many others, and they do show, they do validate what the PMI is showing us, that China's economy is expanding, and it will be, if not the only one, then one of the very few economies in the world this year that has a positive rate of growth. And the reason that's important is that it's by far the largest contributor to global growth. Last year, China was responsible for a third of global growth, more than twice that of the United States.
Mr. Matthews, we've got relations between China and the United States, not at their best, shall we say, worsening ties, no doubt. But what's the outlook for the rest of the year then?
On the policy front, my sense is that it's best to turn it off. It's interesting to listen to the rhetoric, but if you just think back to last year when it was about the trade war, and basically if you were to try to weave in and out of markets based on China and the U.S. criticizing each other, you would have wound up losing a lot of money. I don't think it's a big deal. The two countries will disentangle their economies. It will take a long time. I frankly don't think it's bad for either of them. In the case of China, if they have to make their own chips, they'll make their own chips. That's actually a good thing, not a bad thing.
But saying that, despite the better-than-expected PMI numbers, the reports noted that employers, they are cautious about increasing headcount. How concerned are you about unemployment in China then?
Well, I guess it is a concern for sure, as it is everywhere in the world. I think what I would say is it's one of the countries, not the only, but one of the countries that really does have the fiscal and monetary firepower to build a bridge toward a time when we do have either the virus somehow has just gone away on its own or mutated into much less potent forms, or we have a vaccine. I don't think we'll have to look much into the future for that. And it also has the ability through moral suasion to encourage companies to employ workers. So employment for sure is a concern, but I think at least in the case of China, it's one of the countries where we don't have to worry as much.
Let's take a look at some of the numbers that we've got for other countries, because we know that they're not looking that good for Japan and India, still quite depressed in May. When do you think a recovery is likely for Japan?
Probably this month will be the bottom for Japan and most other countries. You know what? I take that back. Last month was, because the Japanese economy is opening up. I think pretty much all economies are opening up, and you would have been shot down for saying this a month ago, but increasingly, I think the voices that are saying the lockdowns were excessively harsh and even counterproductive, as much as they saved some people from getting sick or dying through coronavirus, tuberculosis, cancer, depression, suicide, drug abuse. I mean, the list is endless of people who will probably, unfortunately, die as a result of the lockdown. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there will not be another lockdown, even if there is a second wave of the virus. I think we have better ways of dealing with it now through masks, social distancing, increasingly better medication. The virus does seem to have mutated into a slightly less potent form. So anyway, it was kind of rambling, but I think that the bottom was last month in Japan and most other parts of the world.
All right, well, I want to look at India because it is also battling weather woes. Today, Mumbai narrowly missed a cyclone, Nisarga, and, just within a month, they had to deal with cyclone Amphan. How will this hamper India's recovery from just not only the calamities, but COVID-19 as well?
Yes, unfortunately, India is a country where it will take longer to recover. Number one, Maharashtra state is where Bombay is, of course, but the virus is still in pandemic proportions there. I think 99% of the ICU beds are occupied. It is one of the parts of the world where it's still looking very bad. And as much as we can take some comfort in the fact that most countries follow the same path, so I don't think it's going to be this bad next month. It does mean that state remains in lockdown until the end of this month. And slowly but surely, in most of the rest of the country, they're opening up, and fingers crossed how the progression of the virus goes. But it isn't a place where they can lock down for very long. There aren't enough people who can work at home, like Dawn and I are doing right now. And there are too many migrant workers who would starve if they weren't working. So it'll open up, but the virus is still in India bad. Therefore, I think it'll come out of this later than the average of countries in the world.
Well, thank you so much for your analysis and speaking to us this evening. Mark Matthews, Head of Research Asia at Julius Baer.